Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Steve Dubel. Mike got called away to California for a pretrial at the last minute and is not able to join us. We apologize to all the people on Zoom that are tuning in live. This is our, I think, second hybrid event, and we're running a little bit behind. It's our first time at Kimson, and we apologize, but we're running a little bit behind schedule here today. While people are still going through the line and getting their food, I'd like to introduce Najib from Bluebeam. And Najib's company, Bluebeam, has graciously, in support of Harris County Democratic lawyers, without charge, revamped our website, which will go live probably by the end of the week. And I'm going to turn it over to Najib right now, and he's going to show you our new website, which is we're very excited about, and we're very thankful to Bluebeam for their work on this.
Thank you so much. Hello, everyone. My name is Najib El-Kayari, and I'm... Can you hear me? Yes. Yeah. I'm very happy to be here with you today. Excited to show you the new website what we're still working on. I'm gonna be very short. This is the current website, and this is the new one that we worked with few of you to design. The most important thing about the web design and online presence is, and this is an advice from somebody, I've been doing this work for 20 years now, you have to be aware of your online presence and make sure that you're engaged on an active base, on a regular base. So that's why I'm reaching out to each one of you to review the current website once it goes live. If you have anything that you want to share with us, any ideas, we will have basically events, pictures. The idea here is we need to reach out to a lot of people, and you guys are the first one to give us the feedback. So let me just scroll here. The sections that we wanted to concentrate on in the main page is basically the mission, the message of the president, and we will have videos here and the donate section here. We will have these sections here. We're still working on them, and as I said again, once the website is live, we would like to have your feedback. Anything that you want us to change. I have my business card outside if you want to reach out. So please be active on this part and help us give basically a beautiful looking website that's updated on a regular basis. The importance of online presence is something that I cannot stress enough. If you use online and you judge websites just by the first seconds that you open them, we would love you to give us a feedback. So the HCDLA website is better every day. Thank you, I appreciate your time, and good luck.
Thank you, Najib and Bluebeam. And again, they did this in support of Harris County Democratic lawyers without charge to us. And I played around on the website this morning. It's beautiful. We hope to have it up and live by the end of the week, and you'll get an email about that. Before we start the program, there's a few announcements, and is Brandon here? Okay, sorry. First, I want to introduce elected officials. I know we have our district clerk, Marilyn Burgess, here. And Judge Corey Cipollio is here. And Danny Norris with the Harris County Department of Education, is that correct? And I know we have at least one candidate here. Denise Brown is running for judge. What court are you running for? Which bench? 270th. 270th, okay. And do we have any other candidates here today?
I'm running for the 14th Court of Appeals. I'm Shereen Thomas.
Oh, great. Glad to have you here. Did I miss any other elected officials or candidates here today?
Mayor Harrison, I'm running for Commissioner Precinct 2.
Okay. Happy to have you here. All right, I'd now like to introduce Otis, who's going to give us a brief update. Otis is the Harris County Party Chair. He's also the Chief of Staff for Representative Rosenthal. And you can either use this mic or this one up here, whichever you prefer, Otis. That's fine.
Good afternoon, Harris County Democratic Lawyers Association. Oh man, this is a tough crowd this afternoon, Stephen. We gotta wake them up. Good afternoon, Harris County Democratic Lawyers Association. Oh, that's much better. I like that. Thank you for those of you that are joining us on Zoom as well too. I will not take that long because we have a really, really important speaker that's going to be talking to us about what's going on with our justice system. But I did want to tell you that we are rocking and rolling at the Harris County Democratic Party. I hope you all will join us. We have some things coming up. I cannot make the announcement public yet because we just have to solidify it all. But we're going to be having a couple of guests coming into Houston next month, which will be very, very exciting. So you all look out for that. Please keep up to date with us at the harrisdemocrats.org, our website. It's as cool as this one that HCDLA has introduced to us all. We're on Twitter, we're on Facebook, and we're constantly updating. But I also wanted to give you a quick update about what's going on with the Texas legislature. As you all know, if you're a Democrat, the Texas legislature, simply put, has been hell this session. We had a regular session, and then we had 3 sessions where we literally did nothing to help lives better here in Texas. And what we're doing even more now, we're in the redistricting process. And the redistricting process has been even worse. We are splitting, we are cracking, we are packing, particularly communities that are disadvantaged, disenfranchised, marginalized, and voiceless. And so I encourage you all, today there's going to be a rally at Emancipation Park with Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee, Congressman Al Green as well too, where we're going to try to talk about how it's important to keep the 9th Congressional District, which is Congressman Al Green's district, and Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee's district, Congressional District 18 together. Unfortunately, Congressman Green and Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee have been put into the same district because they are trying to voter suppress through gerrymandering. They already tried to take our freedom to vote earlier, and they are trying to do it even more. So I encourage you all to show up 5 o'clock, Emancipation Park, and please contact your state reps, contact your federal reps as well too, because a lot of this could be subverted if our federal government would end the Jim Crow relic that is the filibuster, and we wouldn't have to have gerrymandering anymore. And I leave you with this. Please keep making good trouble. Keep making necessary trouble because our fragile democracy absolutely demands it. Thank you all.
Thank you, Otis. And if y'all are not already sustaining members of the Harris County Democratic Party, I urge you to do so. Otis is doing great work, and they really need those sustaining monthly donations. I'm now going to turn it over to Nicholas Spencer, who's the president of Texas Democratic Lawyers Association. And we have people tuning in on Zoom all across the state today, and this will be recorded and put up in about a week or so for later viewing. And again, we apologize to all the online people for running behind today. We're probably going to go about 10 minutes past 1 today since we started so late. And we apologize for that. Nicholas, take it over.
Thank you, Steve, and I appreciate Otis for getting the crowd warmed up for me so I don't have to do any impressive work over here. We do want to thank Otis for the great work he's doing over in Harris County and make sure that we support him in any way that we can. So if you guys are able to make it out to that event today at Emancipation Park, that would be amazing. We look forward to seeing you. Greetings to our elected members of the everything that people are elected to. You guys are doing the Lord's work, and we appreciate you more than you know. So thank you guys for putting yourselves out there for doing those sorts of things. We truly appreciate it. Texas Democratic Lawyers Association is delighted to be here today, and they're delighted to be a part of this presentation that you're about to see. So without further ado, I'd like to talk a little bit about the wonderful people who are going to be presenting for you guys today. I'd like to begin with Anthony Romanucci, who you guys may have heard of. He is one of the finest lawyers in the country, and he is based out of Chicago. I went to law school in Chicago, so I can tell you that one of the few good things about Chicago is Mr. Romanucci's firm, so we should all give him a round of applause for the great work that they're doing over there. He has a somewhat storied legal career in Chicago where he has been one of the foremost fighters for civil rights and plaintiffs' work, including his time serving as chair of the State of Illinois Trial Lawyers Association. Because of the great work that he was doing, he's also been recognized by the Illinois Supreme Court, and they've appointed him to several commissions where he has ensured that justice in Illinois has been up to the standard that we're requiring around here. So we very much appreciate Mr. Romanucci's great work there. And there isn't enough great things we can say about the good work that he's been doing in Chicago. He's going to be addressing you today as part of the legal team for the George Floyd family and talking to you guys about what it's like to represent a family like George Floyd. In addition to Mr. Romanucci, we have another speaker today, and he gave me a biography that I can read for you guys, but there's a couple of things I probably want to talk to you guys about first. So you're probably familiar with Mr. Crump. I think the Reverend Al Sharpton referred to him as Black America's Attorney General. He's literally everywhere, all the time, doing everything. So when we talk about doing the Lord's work, we all would hope to aspire to a career like Mr. Crump, who spent so much time fighting on the front lines for justice and civil rights for everyone. I know that Mr. Crump's also spent some time as president of the National Bar Association, which is the oldest and largest historically black bar association in the country, and one could not possibly be doing more work than the National Bar Association. I know at the moment they're very committed to working with Haitian refugees. And I know that that was the sort of thing that Mr. Crump instilled in them when he was when he was president of the National Bar Association. We know that Mr. Crump's the work that he does is incredibly important. We know that both Mr. Crump and Mr. Romanucci also take their legal talents onto television to make sure that they can advocate not just for the specific clients that they have at the moment, but for the overarching civil rights and justice that we all need. So we could not be happier to have them to come and speak to us today, and by all means, they are going to put on a fantastic presentation for you guys. So without further ado, Mr. Romanucci and Mr. Crump.
Thank you so much for being here this afternoon, and it's always even better to be with truly, and when I say this, I don't say it tongue-in-cheek, I say it with heartfelt meaning. When I tell you that Ben Crump is my brother, he is my brother. We've known each other maybe for not as long as some people would think, about 6 years or so, but we've been working together very closely for the last several. And it's because of what happened, the murder in Minneapolis last year, is what's really brought us together, because I've actually seen his Bonvoy app. I've seen the app when it opens up and it shows how many nights he's away from home. And it's almost cruel to think that he spends that much time away from his family in order to serve justice in this country. He doesn't only serve justice for one family or two families, but he really does make his best efforts to serve this entire country. And 2 out of 3 nights are spent away from home, from his family, to do the work that somebody just said, to do God's work and to ensure that civil rights are maintained in this country. So, why are we here today? We are here today because we are hopeful that we leave this audience and the people on Zoom with maybe 1 or 2 takeaways, right? If we leave you with 1 or 2 things today that you can leave here and think about and take action on, Ben and I have done our job, because we've taken our case on the road now. This is not something that we haven't done before. We aren't here representing anybody. We're here representing the people of this country because of the injustices we've seen, not only since George Floyd, but before. George Floyd allowed other cases to rise to the top and be noticed. And so Ben and I are going to do a little question and answer session right now. And when we're done with it, I'm going to turn over the microphone to Ben. And it's unfortunate, really unfortunate, that I had to write some of my questions on paper because there are so many of them. And they're not very long, it's pretty easy. but you'll see what we're talking about. So, Ben, when I say the words sleeping at home, and when we're looking at it in the context of policing in America, what do you think of when I say sleeping at home?
Sadly, my mind is immediately taken to Louisville, Kentucky, where Breonna Taylor was sleeping in her bed when the police executed an unnecessary, unjustifiable, and an unconstitutional no-knock warrant that left that sister mutilated with 6 bullets in her body while she was practically naked.
Ben, when I say the words walking away from the police with your hands up in the air, what do you think of?
When we think of walking away from the police with your hands up, Terrence Crutcher comes to mind. Terrence Crutcher was a black man having car trouble. He had committed no crime, Tony, and it's on video, him with his hands up walking away slowly from the policewoman, and she still shoots him in the back, and nothing happens to her, and the family hasn't received any measure of justice, either in the criminal case nor the civil case, because we're still fighting this qualified immunity.
Ben Crump, if I say the word having a bad day, you're having a bad mental health crisis day, what do you think of?
Well, Tony, that could be any number of marginalized people of color, whether it's Daniel Prude up in Rochester, New York, who we all saw on the video, naked in the middle of winter, and the police put a bag over his head and have him held down to the ground where he loses consciousness and dies. Or even closer to home, I think of Pamela Turner, a black woman who has a documented history of mental illness, being harassed by a police officer. He confronts her, and she continues to ask him, "Why are you bothering me?" And when she's on the ground, she says, "I'm pregnant." And apparently he has no consideration for her or the possible life inside of her, Ms. Tolan. And while she's on her back and he's on his feet, he shoots her 3 times, once in the face, once in the breast, and once in the stomach. And Pamela Turner, death is documented on that video. And I declare, Tony Romanucci, other than George Floyd, I have not seen a more horrific documentation of police excessive force than with Pam Turner.
Well, that may be true, but what comes to mind when you're driving home on your bicycle and your headlight isn't working on your bicycle?
Well, obviously that's a case you and I know far too well, Tony, because we're trying to make America learn about Byron Williams. His crime was he was black riding a bicycle. And the police, literally, Silky, he's riding a bicycle. The police chase him because he's riding a bicycle and he did not have a light on his bicycle. That is his crime. And then they hold him down, put him in a prone position, and he dies. And nobody's talking about Byron Williams, and that is farther, torture to his family than seeing the video of his last few minutes of his life, because it happens so much, Tony, that people can't keep up with the hashtags.
Well, Byron Williams, before I get off track, Let me tell you why Byron Williams was hunted down. He was hunted by the Las Vegas Metro Police for not having his light on in his bicycle, because we found out through records that that's how they justify pretextual stops. That's how they justify stopping people on bicycles, black people on bicycles, so they could hunt them, catch them, and frisk them to see whether or not they have illicit drugs or guns on them. And Byron Williams was doing none of those. He didn't have anything that was illegal on him, but he was illegally driving while black, riding a bicycle while black. Ben, what happens if you're eating vanilla ice cream on your living room sofa?
You know, we're here in Texas. You all know what happened to Botham Jean in Dallas, Texas, on a Thursday night watching NFL football in his own apartment, minding his own business. Tony, he was in his legally leased apartment. He was doing everything you would want young people to do. He graduated from college early. He was a certified public accountant. He was working for one of the big 3 accounting firms, PricewaterhouseCoopers. I mean, his future was so bright, you really had to wear shades when you consider his future. But yet, a white policewoman allegedly came into the wrong apartment, shot and killed him, and get this, Tony Romanucci, and then she claimed self-defense. Think about that. And a lot of people gave her the benefit of consideration. And what broke my heart, Tony, because I was in the criminal trial, and the jury did convict her. She got the lightest sentence I've ever seen for a first-degree murder conviction, sentenced to 10 years, can get out in 5. But what was even more astonishing to me, and Ms. Tolan, you all remember we talked about this, it was just astonishing. Everybody was sympathetic to her, had consideration. I mean, the judge came off the bench, gave her a hug, and gave her a Bible. And all the time I just kept thinking, and yeah, you all may have been in courtrooms over the years. I mean, there are so many black men and brown men who have been wrongfully convicted in America. I mean, didn't do anything at all. They just happened to be in the wrong place at the wrong time and have the wrong skin color according to the powers that be. And they went to prison for 10, 20, 30, 40, sometimes life almost before they were exonerated. And everybody knew that they were innocent. Everybody knew that their life had been stolen from them. And never once have I seen a judge cry and get off the bench and go hug them and give them a Bible. And so I just kept sitting there like, if ever you wanted an example of the 2 justice systems that exist in America, one for black America and another for white America, that is it. A black person has never been convicted of first-degree murder and given that type of consideration than was given to Amber Geiger for killing this completely innocent young 25-year-old black man, Botham Jean.
Ben, I want to applaud you because what you have now just defined, before we can move on and we continue on, you have defined not only implicit bias, but systemic racism too. If we don't call this out now, then we're all kidding ourselves because that's what exists. That's why white people are afraid of black people. Why do you think all these people that he's named off, that I've asked them questions on, have been killed? Why would a black man riding a bicycle be killed? Why would a man eating vanilla ice cream on his couch be killed? Why? Because of the implicit bias that exists in this country with respect to white versus black. And that's what we have to eliminate. And we had that chance, and we're going to talk about it. We had this glorious chance. Congress had this phenomenal opportunity to change this, to equalize, to raise the tide so that we're all balanced, and they failed. I don't know who failed, but we're going to ask the question, and we want to see answers as to who is honest about who was going to vote for that bill. What happens if you're black and you're driving with an air freshener hanging from your rear windshield?
Yeah. Just like the others, you are profiled, and the most excessive force is used against you. Dante Wright, there within the Minneapolis greater population, during the trial of Derek Chauvin for killing George Floyd, Dante Wright is pulled over by the police allegedly for not having his tag registered in the midst of this global pandemic. And Nicholas, it is a memo that's been circulated by the state DMV telling police officers, because we've been in a pandemic and the office has been closed, many people, Madam Clerk, are not going to have their up-to-date registration on their tag. So we should not be detaining people for that there. But I guess when you're black, you know, they just forget those memos and those rules. She pulled him over, and she's a training officer, remember, Tony? And she says he has an air freshener hanging from his rearview mirror, and that is illegally placed. He ends up being killed because she allegedly pulls her gun when she thought it was her taser. But remember, the entire reason why they were having this pretextual encounter with this young man, this young black man, was because the air freshener was illegally placed. I have never seen them say that to a white brother or sister, that we gonna detain you because your air freshener is illegally placed in your car. But that's the intellectual justification of discrimination that we deal with all the time, Tony, when we fight these cases.
Well, Ben, just to continue on that, just last month, a very brave judge in the Northern District of Illinois, Andrea Wood, issued a memorandum in opinion on a case that our office had filed. This was, Ben, before we started working together. We filed the case in April of 2015, alleging systemic racism against the Chicago Police Department for their unconstitutional policy of stop and frisk. Judge Wood finally certified that class on behalf of 2 million, I can't say black men because those are 2 million stops. We don't have that many black men in the city of Chicago, all right?
Some of them got stopped 2 or 3 times.
Oh, or 10 times.
Or 10.
Or 10 times. Or 10 times. On behalf of 2 million stops, she certified that class injunctively, saying that the Chicago Police Department has a custom policy and practice of deficient training where their police officers don't know how to conduct the most basic of police maneuvers known as the Terry stop. What's reasonable, articulable suspicion, right? Their justification for the stop always came afterwards. And that is the primest example. That happened during our mayoral administration of Rahm Emanuel, who's now getting, I'm sorry, but he's getting a promotion now to ambassador of Japan. That's what he gets. Oh, and he also was the mayor during that case of Laquan McDonald. Anybody remember that one?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, the young man walking away, shot 16 times. He's getting bumped because he presided over that sort of police department during that time. So I love our president, but I don't love his appointment of Rahm Emanuel as ambassador. So
Hey,
Ben,
can I tell them a little bit about Laquan McDonald?
Yeah, please.
Because it really goes to show you why we have work to do. Go look at the video. Don't take Tony Romanucci's word for it. Don't take Ben Crump's word for it. Go look at the video of Laquan McDonald this teenage African American who 14 police officers were on the scene, Tony? Was it 14?
Oh, it was a dozen, who knows?
Yeah, 14 officers on the scene. This officer claims that he has to shoot him 16 times because Laquan was coming at him and he was in fear of his life. And when the video was released, it shows Laquan McDonald walking away from him. And the police shot him the first time, and he went to the ground. And then this officer proceeded to shoot him 15 times more while he was on the ground. And 14 police officers on the scene, along with this killer cop, lied and said they witnessed what happened and that Laquan was attacking the officer. And so that's why Tony and other citizens in Chicago, when they see that Rahm Emanuel and the people who were complicit in watching this execution of this teenage kid, this child, should not be rewarded when they don't respect black lives and don't believe black lives matter. That is Exhibit A in Chicago, Illinois, and that's saying a lot when you think about the history of Chicago. But that video of Laquan McDonald he emptied the clip, and wasn't he trying to put another clip in, Tony?
Yeah, he emptied out his 15+1. He emptied out his entire gun on him. And then his partner stopped him from reloading and continuing to shoot. But then it's too late. Okay, good job. Okay, he didn't get hit with 17. But I can talk about Freddie Wilson, who reached for his wallet on command from the Chicago Police Department and got fired at 22 times from 3 different police officers. I can go on and on. I mean, Chicago's sordid and storied corruption history of cover-ups is unconscionable. I mean, did anybody know? Did you know that we have a torture commission set up now because of John Burge?
I heard, but it deserves education.
Right. Well, the torture commission was set up because we had a commander who was very, very good at what he did, 35 years ago, because he tortured young black men with electric cattle prods and extorted confessions from them. And they were convicted and spent, it's hard to even say probably how many thousands of years unjustifiably in prison and jails. And eventually they had to set up a torture commission for these people to compensate them for all the wrongs that John Burge and his night crew had committed over the years. But we can go on and on for that.
Tony, sorry, we've got a bunch of people on the line and they're saying they can't hear you.
Really?
You mind in the room, but if you could speak up a little.
Sure. Okay, I'll do that. I'll speak a little bit closer. Ben, last question, last one, and then we can continue on. But what happens when you pass a phony $20 bill in a convenience store?
Certainly, everybody thinks the same thing when they hear about a alleged $20 counterfeit bill. Alleged. That the person, you don't even know if George Floyd ever knew. We trade money all the time. How do you know if you get a counterfeit bill? I don't believe anybody is suggesting that George Floyd was making counterfeit money in his basement. But this alleged passing of a counterfeit bill leads to him being tortured to death in one of the most witnessed police murders in the history of the world. I think, Tony, they said the video may have been seen now 300 million times on YouTube alone. And when you watch the video, you can never unsee that video, because your worst thought you can't imagine a human being begging, saying, I can't breathe 28 times. And police, people who are supposed to be trained to preserve life, is seeing, not offering George Floyd any benefit of the doubt, any professionalism, any consideration, any humanity. Just humanity, basic common humanity, that a human being is suffering and all I gotta do is move my knee and he can take another breath to extend life. But yet they do not do it because they have a pattern and practice with the Minneapolis Police Department that they use excessive force indiscriminately on people of color, especially young black men. And we have George Floyd, who, for history, Tony, will be remembered when we think about police excessive force. That is the video everybody will go through. It would be synonymous with history as we remember Emmett Till when we think of lynching. And that's why Tony and I are here to try to touch the hearts and minds of you great lawyers and you great triers of fact as you sit on the bench when you think about what marginalized people of color have to deal with every day of our existence. Every day of our existence. You pray when your children leave the house, will they come home safely, Miss Tolan? Or will they be shot in our own neighborhood because we live in a predominantly white neighborhood and anybody black in the neighborhood is deemed suspicious and as a suspect like Robbie Tolan. So I know there's some commonality that leads us to what we talk about with Congress.
So, George Floyd, by any standards, for Ben and I, was a very successful outcome, right? The civil case was beyond record-setting, not just for Minnesota, but in this country, for a wrongful death, the wrongful death of a black person. It showed the value of life, but also the value of life of color. The criminal case was successful. I mean, I can't tell you how many times Ben and I are confused with the criminal lawyers. Yeah. That was a great job, great conviction that you all got. Well, you know, I wish, but
keep Ellison in the prosecutor.
Absolutely, absolutely. But this is what's so significant about the criminal case. You know, some people were disappointed at the 22.5-year sentence that Derek Chauvin received. And he could have received up to, I believe, 40-ish or close to 40 years. He got 22.5, so it was a little bit of a meh moment when he got 22.5. But Jason Van Dyke, who was Laquan McDonald's murderer, right, convicted of murder for same charge, second-degree murder, same elements of proof, second-degree murder, Illinois and Minnesota, 6 years and 9 months, okay? We could go around the horn here and talk about the sentences that other white police officers have received for the killings or murders of black men. I think there's only one other sentence that was higher than Derek Chauvin. I don't know the police officer's name, but it was the horrific case. I think it was out of Brooklyn where they sodomized that man with a baton stick over and over. Thank you. Yeah, and he got close to 30 years. After that, it's Derek Chauvin. So, as much as George Floyd was a success, we stand here before you with our heads bowed feeling a sense of failure also, because he and I promised each other from day one, the moment that we first saw each other in person after George Floyd's death, which was about 6 days later is when we first met each other, or first encountered each other in person. We promised each other that this was not going to be just a fight for George Floyd. It was going to be a fight for the country, the fight for the citizens of this country. And I cannot tell you how seriously we took it, how much effort we put into it, the discussions we've had. And, you know, after the House passed the bill in March, that's when we got to work in D.C. With the Senate. I'm not even sure how many trips we've had, either individually or combined together. Too many. And boy, let me tell you how rough it is when you're sitting across the table from senators and they're telling you, Mr. Crump, we promise you we will get this done. I don't know, I'm a faithful person. I kind of believe most of the time when people say something, don't you, Ben? I do. I mean, if you told me something, I'd bank on it, except if it had to do with cryptocurrency. I don't know if I would take that one, but I'm not sure yet. And visit after visit, when they would tell us that they were going to get it done, yeah, I knew they were lying. Lying. Just like the police officers do. They lied to us. It wasn't the Democrats, I got to tell you that. We won't tell you who it was that we spoke to. I guess I don't want to go that far. I've already tried to take down one politician. I'm not going to try and take down a whole bunch of them. But every time we went, and the last time that we left there, we knew it. We knew. We had hope. We had great hope, but we knew that it wasn't going to happen, and sure enough, it didn't. So, what he and I have been doing, not since then, but during then, since even last year, is we've been doing this. That's why we're so honored to be here today, because we want to talk to you. We want to impress upon you how important the fight is now on the local level and the state level. This is where the fight now begins. This is where it starts. And if you want to tell them really quickly, without going too far into what the outcome is, because we're still under confidentiality until it's done, but Javier Ambler, because we can tell them how we've been successful going on certain matters state to state, here in Texas. Go ahead.
Well, just real fast, Javier Ambler was synonymous to George Floyd when he said, "I can't breathe neither." He was a young African-American in Austin, Texas, who was driving, and they said he failed to stop at the stop sign, and the police from the county and the city were there, and it happened to be Live PD there with them.
You guys remember that show, Live PD?
Yeah, and so I guess trying to show off for Live PD, they took him to the ground and they put him in the prone position, and he said, "I can't breathe," but you know, you got a TV show filming you, so they kept doing the most, and Javier Ambler died. But largely due to Tony Romanucci, and I really tell you, his firm and he are so dedicated to trying to prevent these unnecessary killings. We pray every day that we can close down the police excessive force departments of our law practice, because we are tired of seeing people killed senselessly, unnecessarily. So Javier, we got a great result, but more importantly, we pushed for there to be changes in policy. And now the state of Texas said the Javier law is that you cannot have any more of these police shows filming police doing work for entertainment. And that is Tony Romanucci and the Texas Democrats led that effort. So congratulations, brother.
So the Javier Ambler law is now in effect, and Live PD went off the air last June. Now, shockingly, Fox is going to pick up cops again, okay? Oh yeah, right? Well, who else? I mean, it's...
Because
so,
there's a lot of entertainment in watching police officers threaten minorities.
But not Live PD. So the state of Texas, Governor Abbott signed the Javier Ambler law where no more filming for entertainment purposes in ride-alongs with police, because you can read the complaint, because I can only do that. Our complaint against the entertainment company and the municipality alleges that there were certain communications that encouraged how to entertain as you're performing your police duties. That's all I'll say. So what we're doing here is so important. Minnesota, not surprisingly, has undertaken some of the most robust police reforms probably ever seen by a state in history. So they've done a very good job. Illinois, we're very proud to say that in April of this year, the General Assembly passed not as wide of a bill as we would have wanted, but extensive police reforms, and the governor signed it in May. Texas, we just talked about that law, and we're committed to going state to state, city to city, whatever we can do, whether it's a case-by-case basis, to make it better, because we can't trust that the federal government will do it.
And can I interrupt and just say this, Tony?
Please.
I'm very impressed, and I pulled it up on my phone, because here in Houston, under Mayor Turner's direction, they have done many things since the death of George Floyd, and not many people know it. But they have banned chokeholds, they banned shooting at moving vehicles. They have a duty to intervene now. Over half of the 140 recommendations have been implemented that was suggested by the ACLU, and $25 million have been committed by the Houston Police Department towards mental health. And so that's all in light of George Floyd, what we couldn't accomplish on the federal level. Like Tony said, we're having to go to city and state to state, trying to make the changes so we can prevent the next George Floyd.
And since George Floyd, Ben, I think you know the numbers a little bit better than I do. The last time you and I talked, since George Floyd, there were, what, about 100 black men that have been killed by police, and that was a couple months ago. I don't know what the new number is.
Oh, it has grown disproportionately, but remember, George Floyd was killed May 25th, 2020, and everybody said that, okay, that was the turning point. We were not going to keep doing this. Man, how naive were we? And that 6 months during the pandemic, when the police supposed to have learned their lesson, over 100 more unarmed black men were killed. And I stress unarmed.
Mm-hmm. So what I want to do, because I know we're running out of time and we want some Q&A, and this is actually a presentation that Ben and I are giving tomorrow at the Thurgood Marshall Law School. So I think some of you, there's going to be some crossover, so I don't want to spoil it for everybody. But you know, what I do want to impress upon you, and we're going to end it with a video and then take some questions and answers. What I want to impress, and the way I was going to start off our discussion tomorrow at Thurgood Law School, is, you know, what are the consequences? You know, think about, what are the consequences when a black man who's unarmed, in a prone position, restrained, literally is begging, is saying to an officer, please, sir, I can't breathe. And when you notice that that police officer has his knee in a perfect position, that's a carotid, it's not even a chokehold, that's a carotid hold, right? That's when you're, you know, restricting blood flow from brain to heart and to lungs. And you can see that toe curled up, making sure that he can put maximum pressure on that knee with his hand in his pocket to push even harder on his knee to make sure that this man can't move. And what you can't see in the picture is the urine flow coming from George, because literally the life is being squeezed out of him. I want you to think about that. I want you to paint that imagery in the back of your skull, because then people say, well, what are those consequences? This ain't pretty, right? Well, this is even worse. Those were our consequences last summer, in the middle of a pandemic, when the world was at home, and our 17-year-old brave girl, Darnella, published that video, and we watched the execution of George Floyd 9.5 minutes long, over and over again. Our country lit up. And here we sit before you with now one piece of federal legislation. I'm short of disgusted by it. So, can't look. It's all right, it's frozen. Let's see if, yeah, we're gonna play the video. I kept, my own pictorial journal of what we did last year. Isn't that beautiful? Look at that. That's the criminal outcome. I will show you this, because this is I could get emotional thinking about this. This is a billboard right over Cup Foods. And this is worthwhile to discuss, because the art that came out of George Floyd's murder is beyond beautiful. So much expression came from what happened to George that he and I have witnessed. Right now, I'm literally, my spine is tingling. But this was the billboard over Cup Foods. And these are George's last words, remember? When he said mama, right? But mama was gone already, right? If you didn't know, George's mom had already been deceased. And so this is a mural expressing that expression of his mama hearing her boy's cries as he's being murdered. Her tears, her screams, her inability the resolve is gone, right? So powerful. And it's large. This was, like I said, this is you could Clear Channel, if you know that's a billboard. So we're gonna end it with this video. Are we gonna get sound from here?
Tony Romanucci and some of the families that have been forever changed as a result of the problems we have with policing in America. These are problems that have existed for decades. But because of the tragic killing of George Floyd, it has given our nation a once-in-a-generation opportunity to finally address these issues. This is an issue that can no longer be ignored. The United States Senate has an opportunity to complete the work that was started by the United States House of Representatives when it passed the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act.
Police across this country need to have one standard, and it has to be a high one on how they are hired, trained, and managed throughout their careers.
We're seeing new body camera footage of the chilling moments after Taylor was shot dead by police officers in her home last March.
I am Tamika Palmer, the mother of Breonna Taylor. No family should ever have to go through what we have and will for the rest of our lives. Please urge your senator to pass reform banning no-knock warrants and pass federal police reform now.
Blood, they flipping over no grave. I mean that. God bless y'all, man. Stay on Get the back here.
My name is Tashira Crew, and I am one of the daughters of the late Daniel Crew. My family and I feel strongly that the Justice and Policing Act needs to be passed effective immediately. Police need better training when it comes to dealing with people who have mental health issues and are going through mental health episodes. The stuff that happened to my father should not have happened to anyone, and it should never happen to anyone again.
My name is Tina Cree. I am the niece of Byron Williams, who was killed by Las Vegas Metro Police Department on September 5th of 2019. Byron Williams was riding his bicycle when he was chased, subdued, and apprehended. Moments later, all body cameras were turned off. We demand this bill to pass for accountability and transparency. We want all body cameras to be left on. The time is now. No more families need to suffer. Please call.
What do you want?
I can't breathe. Please, the name of Dick.
I'm Phalonis Floyd, brother of George Floyd, and we live in a world where they are using brutal force against defenseless people. We need to end qualified immunity and prone restraints. The pain that my family and I, as well as other families, have gone through is unbearable. Let's seek accountability now. I'm asking that you not wait until tragedy hits your door personally. Let's pass the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act and don't water down the bill.
It's not gonna happen anymore. My mom is not a horrible person. I'm Chelsea Rubin. My life was forever changed when the police shot and killed my mother, Pamela Turner, 3 days after I gave birth to my baby. She never even got to meet her last grandchild. Please, America, we are better than this.
Surveillance video shows Crutcher being shot as he walked away from Shelby with his hands in the air.
My name is Dr. Tiffany Crutcher, and my twin brother, Terrence Crutcher, was shot by a policewoman with his hands in the air, unarmed, as he walked away in broad daylight. America, please, we are better than this.
Geiger had just finished a late shift when she mistakenly entered John's apartment, thinking it was her own. At the time, she was still in her uniform.
I am Elisa Finley. My life was forever changed when a policewoman entered my brother's apartment and shot and killed him while he was eating ice cream. Please, America, we are better than this.
Hunter Britton was shot and killed during a traffic stop on June 23rd at around 3 a.m.
I'm Jesse Britton, Hunter Britton's uncle, and my life is forever changed after the police shot and killed my unarmed nephew, Hunter Britton. Please, America, we are better than this.
Please call your senator and let them know that we're running out of time. We have to pass the George Floyd Policing Act now.
Our lives depend on it.
So anybody have any questions for our panelists? Shoot. I'm going to repeat your question so they can hear it online.
Sure. About a week ago, I read a study looking back about 4 decades at police killings. And the study indicated or estimated that police killings are actually have been underreported by 50% for the last 40 years. I'd like to get the Crump and Mr. Romanucci's impressions on that. And I'll say that I didn't see where the study was granularized to look at whether the persons killed were unarmed or look at details of their interactions, but the conclusion was that the counts were reported by 50%. So, like the counts.
Yeah, I will briefly respond. It underscores why we need the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act passed so we can have a national database of police-involved killings kept by the Department of Justice. We should not be trying to rely on the police departments themselves to self-report. How has that worked out for us in the past? It just hasn't.
So a lot of those underreported killings are because of two words: excited delirium, right? If a coroner determines that the cause of death was this falsity, right? Excited delirium, there's no diagnostic code for it. It's really a fiction that's created to catch-all bucket. If somebody is acting strangely or weirdly, or they're intoxicated, or they're illegally medicated on methadone or cocaine or heroin, and they're resisting arrest, well, it's not a homicide then, right? It's not a homicide. It's excited delirium. It's an accidental death. And that's where you get the underreporting. That's a main factor, I promise you, of the underreporting, is because of the police officers get to explain the narrative, and dead men don't talk.
Any other questions? Shoot.
I'm glad that you read a little statistic about the mayor and the things that are being corrected.
Why don't I just...
Isidro Garza with Lula. And I want to thank you for that comment, Mr. Crump, and I want to thank the law organization that put this together. It's very informative, but I think more than that, I think it could be the start of a new day, and I think it's all of our mission. A week ago, a case by Nicolas Chavez here in Houston. The grand jury no-billed 6 policemen. The gentleman was about from that distance to over here in the street, in the middle of the street, in his hands and knees, and he was shot 23 times. And just this past week, it was no-billed. And it took a long time for it to even get any traction from the police. It starts from the coroner. You mentioned the coroner and the report that comes from the coroner, from the investigation on the site, from grand jury selection to the input of that which goes into the grand jury. The grand jury itself, us, that's supposed to be us, because that's our conscience. That's who makes the decisions. Yeah. Well, how can it be that it's what's so obvious, as was obvious here in the George Floyd case, cannot apply to this man that was on his hands and knees and shot 23 times.
And we saw the inner workings of the grand jury in Louisville, Kentucky, with Breonna Taylor case. It's well known that a prosecutor in a grand jury proceeding will get whatever outcome they want. The old saying, they can indict a ham sandwich if they want to, is true. And so when the prosecutor doesn't get an indictment, that's because the prosecutor did not want an indictment. And the police unions, North Carolina for Andrew Brown, Michael Brown and Ferguson, and the police unions, for whatever reason, have politicians under siege, as if you do anything, no matter how objective it is, that we're gonna not vote for you and you won't be able to get reelected. Well, I think it's a lot of us too. And when they kill black and brown people and they don't do anything, we should tell them, just like the unions, well, we're not gonna vote for you either, because our votes count too.
And you know, when you look at justice in America, you can see how unequally it's applied, sir. It's not applied fairly or equally, because the one thing that Minnesota and Kentucky have in common is they have a black attorney general. But really, justice should not be a white or black issue, right? It shouldn't be. Now, Ben mentioned Keith Ellison, who, look, just for us, he's our personal hero, just because he took the case seriously, objectively, and he was not afraid, zero fear, to ask for help.
So we helped. We helped because he wanted it, because he wanted justice in America. But then in Louisville, Kentucky, I mean, George Floyd is its own unique circumstances, but when you think about a no-knock warrant with the wrong address and Breonna being killed innocently while sleeping, no justice. That's because he didn't want it. Ben's 100% right. He did not want it, so therefore he directed the bill to where it needed to go. And I'm sorry, somebody, the young man who spoke before us, I don't know where you're at, but you said, make good trouble. Oh boy, you better. Where are you?
He had to go.
Oh, you cut out. He's right. Make good trouble is right. Because if your voice isn't heard, ain't nothing gonna happen.
Gentlemen, we got one more question for you.
Connie Gonzalez, and we're very aware of the Kentucky case and how the criminal implications did not go the way they should have, but you were able to obtain the grand jury transcript. And that's how you found out, that's how all America found out that the presentation that they told us on national television was not what was presented. And so very similarly, we have that in Harris County with Nicholas Chavez. There have been a lot of remediations in Harris County with HPD and the sheriffs, where they're no longer allowed to call immediate imminent danger if someone is more than 25 feet away with you without a gun or a reliable object that can harm a police officer. Nicholas had a deflected taser that one of the policemen had dropped. But I guess my question is, aside from continuing in a civilly, what can we do when the grand jury has failed because of the district attorneys, because of their decision not to indict? We're not allowed to get the transcript, at least not anytime soon. We're asking for it, but we're not allowed to it in Texas. And I know you weren't allowed to it in Kentucky, but you were able to obtain it. I guess I really liked what you said, Ben, in that the political pressure, because I think I really believe, or many of us believe, that the reason they were not indicted before was because of political pressure, and
Yes.
we're at a loss here.
Yeah, and I would just say this, to answer your question, I'm glad Tony has this up.
Here's what you do.
Yeah, you disturb the peace, not only in the court of public opinion, but in the court of law. You have everybody go to the courtroom and sit in and watch the justice being administered. And you know, the people have more power than we think. Ahmaud Arbery, when he was lynched for jogging while black in 2020, not 2030, 2040, it was when we the people saw the video. Months later, they finally charged those officers. The prosecutors and them have saw the video on day one. But when the people act, then if we're united, we won't be defeated. Whether it's George Floyd, whether it's Ahmaud Arbery, Breonna Taylor, we can do it, y'all. We only need to have the courage to stand up and speak truth to power. That's what it's always about, speaking truth to power.
Well, thank you, everybody, and I hope that you can see how evident it is that when Ben speaks, how many people listen, and what an effective communicator he is, not only for Black America, but for all America, for all of us. Love you, Ben.
Thank you all.
Well, guys, yes, last night when I was teaching my class, I was talking to them about effective communication. So I appreciate you guys embarrassing me and explaining to us all how to do it for real. So on behalf of the Texas Democratic Lawyers Association and the Harris County Democratic Lawyers Association, we're immensely pleased to have had you guys today, and thank you for your presentation.
We're grateful. Thank you, Nicholas.
A couple announcements for you guys. We have an upcoming event here on November 4th at the Kim Sung for a luncheon with Lise Olson, which is a great event, so make sure that you come out for that. And on November 18th, we have a Zoom webinar. It's a CLE on abortion rights and the SB 8. I suspect there will be lots of updates going on with respect to that, so that's a Zoom event you're definitely going to want to check our Facebook page and make sure that you get to see that Zoom event. I do want to tell the people that are in the room here today that we have some to-go containers full of the food that we had here for you today, so please pick up some food on your way out and make sure that you tell our hosts what a great job they did with the food. Last but without least, I want to make sure that Steve and Jane get credit for putting on a fantastic event. We are always grateful for the work you guys are doing behind the scenes. One more word from Mr. Crump.
Thank you, Nicholas. I failed to introduce a very special guest, Houston's own Marion Tolan, whose son, Robbie Tolan, was shot in her own driveway for driving while black in Bel Air, Texas, a predominantly white community. And we don't give her her roses enough because based on her faith and conviction, I know Martin is in here as well, the appellate lawyer, went to the United States Supreme Court and got a unanimous decision overturning the decision that said qualified immunity was granted in spite of the objective evidence that contradicted the police narrative. And when she achieved that landmark decision by the United States Supreme Court, 77 cases was reversed in America overnight where black people had been killed and had been kicked out of court. So I always want to acknowledge the mother of this movement, Marion Tolan.
Mr. Crump and Mr. Romanucci, one more thing before you guys go. The gentleman who was shot for riding the bike, you guys have a hashtag that we need to be communicating about that? Hashtag Byron Williams. Let's see what we can't do about getting that hashtag to go viral today, guys. See if we can't get some press on this important case to ensure that work continues. Without further ado, thank you guys for coming out today, and we very much appreciate you all.